I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part nobody believes. It was a Tuesday, the kind of gray afternoon that makes you clean closets you have no business cleaning. My wife was at her sister's for the week, and I was moving boxes when the folder slipped, old photographs, tax papers, and underneath all of it, a letter. Not addressed to her. Addressed to a woman named Elena, and never sent. I shouldn't have read it. I read it twice. It wasn't a love letter, not exactly. It was an apology. My father's handwriting, my father, who'd been gone 6 years, apologizing to a woman I'd never heard of for something he never named. I should have told you before I married someone else, it said. I think about the ferry every day. I found her in 11 days. Elena Voss, 51 now, running a bookshop 2 towns over that smelled like cedar and old paper. She didn't know I was coming. She didn't know who I was until I said my father's name and watched her hand go still on the counter, mid-motion, like time had snagged on something. You have his eyes, she said. Not a question. Just a fact she'd apparently been keeping in a drawer for 30 years. I meant to hand her the letter and leave. That was the whole plan. Instead I stood there while she read it, and I watched something in her face come undone in a way I recognized. Because I'd felt it too, reading it alone in that closet. Grief for a version of a life that never got to happen. She looked up at me. Does your wife know you're here? I hadn't thought about that question until she asked it. I didn't answer her right away. That felt important, somehow, that the silence said more than a lie would have. No, I finally said. She doesn't know. Elena set the letter down on the counter like it might bruise if she held it too long. Her shop was empty except for us, the bell over the door gone quiet, dust turning slow in the one shaft of window light. She had this way of looking at a thing without quite looking at it, the letter, then me, then somewhere past my shoulder, like she was giving her face permission to feel things in stages. I was 22, she said, not looking up. He was going to leave her. Then he didn't. I hadn't asked. She told me anyway, the way people do when a stranger accidentally becomes the only person who could possibly understand something. I noticed the gray threaded through her hair at the temple, how she kept touching the corner of the envelope like it was the last piece of him she'd get, and something in my chest did a thing I didn't have a name for yet. I should go, I said, and didn't move. You don't have to. She said it fast, almost surprised at herself. Then, quieter. I haven't talked about him in a long time. It's strange, having someone in the room who, she stopped. She reached over and closed her hand around my wrist, light, like she was checking I was real. Her fingers were cold. Stay a little longer, she said. Please. I should have said no. I was already reaching for the chair instead. I stayed for 2 hours. It should have been 10 minutes. She made tea neither of us drank. She talked about the ferry, the one from the letter, a summer route that didn't run anymore, and how my father used to wait for her at the dock in a jacket too thin for the wind. I watched her hands while she talked. She had a habit of pressing her thumb into her palm when she got close to something that still hurt. You're doing it again, she said suddenly. Doing what? Watching me like you're trying to figure out which parts of you are him. I hadn't realized I was doing that. I looked away, out the window, and when I looked back she hadn't moved, and the space between us had gotten smaller without either of us choosing it. Her knee was almost touching mine. I could smell the tea, and under it something like cedar, like the shop itself had gotten into her skin. I should probably tell my wife I'm here, I said. It came out wrong, too formal, a door I was trying to shut on myself. Probably, Elena agreed, and didn't move either. That was when my phone rang. My wife's name lighting up the screen, loud in the quiet shop, and Elena's eyes dropped to it and then to me, waiting to see what I'd do. I let it ring twice. 3 times. You should answer that, she said, but her hand had found my wrist again, and this time she didn't let go right away. I picked up the phone. I didn't say hello yet. Hello. My voice came out steadier than I felt. My wife's voice, tinny and far away, asking when I'd be home, something about dinner, something about her sister's car. Ordinary words. I answered them like a man reading from a script he'd memorized a long time ago, while Elena sat close enough that I could feel her watching my mouth move. I hung up. The shop felt smaller than it had a minute ago. She's fine, I said, though nobody had asked. Elena didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, like she was setting something down she'd been carrying a while, I'm not trying to make this into anything. I want you to know that. I know. Do you? She finally let go of my wrist, and the absence of her hand felt louder than the touch had. Because I've spent 30 years being fine. I built a whole life around being fine. And you walk in here with his handwriting and she stopped herself, jaw tight, like she'd almost said something she couldn't take back. You what? I keep looking at you and forgetting who you're supposed to remind me of. The words landed somewhere I wasn't prepared for. I thought about my wife's voice on the phone, ordinary and warm and mine, and I thought about the way Elena's face had gone open and unguarded in a way that felt like being handed something fragile. Elena. Don't, she said. Not sharp. Almost pleading. Not yet. Just, look at me and don't say anything for a second. I did. Neither of us breathed right. She looked at me for a long moment, and something shifted behind her eyes, the flicker of a decision. Your wife, she said slowly. What's her name? Grace. Elena went very still. Grace Callahan. My stomach dropped in a way I didn't understand yet. Her maiden name was Belle. I know, Elena said, and there was something almost like a laugh in it, dry and disbelieving. I taught her. Freshman composition, maybe 15 years ago. She wrote an essay about a ferry route her mother used to talk about, how it stopped running before she was born, how she always wanted to see where it used to go. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. I remember because I couldn't finish grading it that night. The room tilted somehow, without moving. You're saying she knew, I said. About you. About him. I don't know what she knew. I only know she carried a piece of this without knowing whose it was. Elena's voice had gone thin, stripped of its earlier steadiness. I told myself it was a coincidence for years. A city isn't that small, I said. But a city is exactly that small, sometimes. I thought of Grace's face on the phone, warm and unknowing, and the letter still sitting on the counter between us like a live wire. I didn't know anymore who I was protecting by staying quiet, or who I was betraying by staying here. I need to see her, I said. Tonight. I know. Elena's hand hovered near mine, then pulled back, the first time all afternoon she'd chosen distance on purpose. But before you go, there's one more thing you should probably see. She reached under the counter and pulled out a second envelope. My name was on it, in my father's handwriting. I didn't open the envelope right away. I just held it, feeling the weight of my own name in his handwriting, wondering how long it had been sitting under that counter waiting for me to exist. You don't have to read it here, Elena said. I know. I opened it anyway. It wasn't long. A few lines, dated the year before he died. Asterisk, if you ever meet her, tell her I kept the photograph. Tell her I'm sorry it took me 30 years to be brave enough to be sorry, asterisk, no mention of my mother. No mention of guilt he expected me to inherit. Just an old man, near the end, trying to settle something he'd let sit too long. I looked up at Elena and understood, finally, what I'd been circling all afternoon without naming it. This wasn't about her. It had never really been about her, not the way my body had been pretending. It was about a man who ran out of time to be honest, and a son who'd almost done the same thing in one afternoon. I have to go home, I said. I know, she said again, and this time there was no pull in it, no hand reaching for my wrist. Just something steady and sad and clear-eyed. Go home, and tell your wife the truth. All of it. She deserves to know where that ferry led. Will I see you again? Maybe. She almost smiled. Not like this, though. I stood at the door a long moment, the letter in my pocket, her outline soft behind the glass. Then I walked out into the gray afternoon and called Grace, and this time I let it ring until she picked up. Grace was on the porch when I got home, arms crossed against the evening chill, like she already knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary night. I told her everything. The letter in the closet. Elena's shop. The ferry route she'd written about in a college essay she probably didn't remember, sitting in a box somewhere in her old professor's memory for 15 years. I watched her face do what mine had probably done that afternoon, disbelief, then something quieter, sadder, older than either of us. All this time, she said, and I never knew his name was tangled up in mine. Neither did I. We sat on the steps a long time, not saying much, the second letter between us like something that finally got to stop being a secret. I told her what Elena said, that she deserved the truth, all of it. Grace took my hand and didn't let go, and for the first time all day the quiet between us felt like relief instead of distance. I think about that afternoon differently now. Not as a moment I almost ruined something, but as the moment I understood what my father never learned in time. That the truth, however late, is still worth more than the silence you build around it. Grace and I talk about it sometimes, over coffee, no longer cold and forgotten on the counter. We even found the old ferry dock last spring. It's a parking lot now. We stood there anyway. Some doors close so another one can finally open honestly. Did you enjoy this story? What kind of story would you like to hear next? One more secret, one more letter, one more house with something hidden in the walls, ***.